Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra Herrera, lead NWSL writer for CBS Sports. Joined today, as always, by my colleague and co-host Lisa Roman, broadcaster and analyst for CBS Sports. On today's show, we have a United States women's national team preview versus England. Big game coming up at Wembley Stadium in London. But we are also going to continue some updates and reactions to the U.S. soccer Sally Q Yates investigation. So, quick reminder before we get into everything to watch all of our Attacking Third episodes, previews, recaps, interviews, reactions on YouTube. Subscribe to our page to get notified whenever we go live at youtube.com/attacking third. Hello to everyone joining us live. It's been a minute. And how you doing today, Lisa? It's great to be back with you.
It is so good to be back, especially because we have international friendlies that we get to preview and talk about. And those are some of my favorite things, especially when it's world champions, the U.S. against European champions, England. But there's been a lot of ongoing news going on in results of the Sally Q Yates investigation results and all of that coming out. And we've had a lot of statements from players and coaches and everything like that. So it's good to kind of check back in on that. I know a lot of our listeners and people joining us live have questions about what's going on. So welcome everyone to the live. And if you're listening on podcast later, it's always great to chat with you all. But U.S. soccer this weekend, we got a lot to dive into. Sandra, how are you doing?
I'm doing about as good as can be expected, right? I rolled up here to this live because we've done an episode on sort of, the Yates report that dropped, sort of a recollection of everything. If you need to get caught up on things, we have an episode out on that already on Attacking Third. So go listen to it on your, appropriate channels, whichever ones you want to use. But we didn't go live for that one. So it's been like a little minute or two since we've actually gone on live and been able to like link up with each other. And then
honestly a little too emotional to go live. That was for us.
That's
for
the
our
question.
Own
That's the that's the $1 million question, right? That everyone's sort of been asking, right now in the space. It's like, how are you? How are you holding up? Like, how are things going? And I don't know if there's like a 100% like authentic answer to that. So I'll just try to be as authentic to myself as I can be and say not great. It's been really, really difficult to sort of reread a lot of the things that have come out in this Yates report. It's stemming from the 2021 that took place with all of the investigative reporting that came out a year ago. This report was spearheaded and commissioned because of that. So it's just a lot of reopening of tragic trauma, and honestly with new additional and expanded details. And it's very, very tough to sort of go through. We've been putting content warnings on things because of it. So just sort of an update on that. The investigation results were released earlier this week on Monday, October the 3rd. Within the findings stating, our investigation has revealed a league in which abuse and misconduct, verbal and emotional abuse and sexual misconduct had become systematic, spanning multiple teams, coaches, and victims. So within this report, ultimately confirming, I think, some of the things that we have been talking about already over the course of this past year. Within the report, many individual players, both current and former, have made statements, have issued their own reactions to the full report and findings of the investigation, including Mana Shim, Sinead Farrelly, and recently Aaron Simon, who came forward as an open and willing participant within these investigations, stating that this had gone on too long and that there were still people in positions of power that needed to be removed. So over the course of those
And
first
calling
48
for
hours,
action. Those statements calling for action, saying it's time for action, accountability, change. Owners who've driven this culture of disrespect have no place in this league. Really calling it out explicitly in their statements.
you saw it like immediately after it dropped. So probably within that first, like I was saying, not even 48, like first 24 to 36 hours, you saw everybody sort of, reacting to it in real time, that it wasn't just the public who were, sharing how horrified they were, or sharing, their shock or this dismay in reading some of these things that we're talking about. Many players, like I said, current and former, reacting to this as well. And when you have former players of the league who were part of this investigation, continuing to ensure that their voices are heard, making reactions, making statements. I think if we've learned nothing else over the course of the last year, you got to pick your ears up and listen, quite frankly. So here, like reading some of the reactions and statement from players, it's evident where they sort of feel the kind of next steps need to come from, and that is where we are sort of 3 days later or so.
And it's not just NWSL players or former NWSL players or players involved in former professional soccer leagues. In the USL Championship League, Louisville Ledgehogs had a game yesterday at home, and the supporters group in Louisville put out tifos displaying Arrest Holly banners. And so this has spread not just throughout the women's soccer world, but it's expanded farther to that because in Louisville, James O'Connor owns both the Louisville USL Club and Racing Louisville. So those supporters speaking out at the USL Championship match yesterday as well.
Yeah, it's just very reflective of like some of the reaction. The landscape of reaction right now is kind of highlighted in very kind of three very specific areas. So you've got supporters in Portland, you've got supporters of Chicago Red Stars, you've got supporters of Racing Louisville kind of also giving their reactions as well to this, and specifically those areas, because those teams are mentioned primarily in this report and its findings, and the investigation around them is very it's a very, very difficult read to get through, but it's live in public for anyone who is looking to read the full report and investigations. But not too surprising, right? I think at this point, to sort of see that supporters groups in these specific areas or of these specific teams are wanting accountability, quite frankly, post report dropping. So it's been very moving, and hearing from the players specifically throughout this time has also been incredibly moving. And over the course of this phase where it feels like and looks like people are looking for that next step of accountability or responsibility, there have been, again, number of statements that have been dropped. So you've got players, past and former, both, former and current, both like making these statements, but you've also got clubs making a variety of statements as well. I believe about roughly half of the league's club or so have made some statements. And out of Portland and Chicago specifically, you have multiple statements that have been made. So there were specific statements from ownership out of those franchises. Merritt Paulson, owner of both Portland Timbers and Portland Thorns, released a statement individually in his own, sort of speaking of next steps, saying that he was going to be stepping away from Thorns related matters. You had one from Arnim Whistler of Chicago Red Stars, saying that he was going to remove himself from the NWSL Board of Governance. And then you had additional statements dropping from both of those franchises just yesterday, on Wednesday, at the time of this recording, on October 5th, with further steps, to let the public know that they were trying to take. So, in additional statements out of Wednesday from Portland, saying that Gavin Wilkinson and Mike Gulab have, been removed from their positions with Thorn. So you're talking about, Gavin Wilkinson, and president of soccer ops, Michael Love, president of business operations of both soccer teams, are, apparently no longer with the club at this point. The wording, I think, folks are kind of fixated on at the moment. Perhaps it wasn't, I don't believe the words fired or terminated were actually used, but relieved of duties was sort of the phrasing that was used. So folks are, I think, honestly, are reacting to that in the best way that they can. I think folks are still sort of looking for more, quite frankly, out of those areas.
I mean, supporters have spoken.
We're seeing protests.
Protests are happening, and the Chicago supporters group putting out statements and putting up fights. Racing Louisville Club releasing a statement saying, we apologize to Erin Simon after they declined to cooperate in the Yates investigation. So they're commending her bravery, Erin Simon's bravery, and apologizing to her. But it's very frustrating to me. That statement from Racing Louisville was incredibly frustrating for me to read, when they say that we commend Erin for her bravery in coming forward as part of the soccer investigation, when the club themselves didn't even participate in the investigation.
100%. And quite frankly, the players reacting to that statement as well. Tyler Griever reporting out of Louisville, speaking with Louisville players, Amina Ekic, Julie Ashe, Taylor Otto, former players, right? And Julie Ashe and Jordan Balcom, so you've got, having interviews with a mix of both, current and former players, and, their reactions to the statement. Quite frankly, the players that once more, leading the way on this, saying, quite frankly, it's not enough, or it doesn't feel like enough to sort of have that type of blanketed statement to just be placed out there. Chicago Red Stars, similarly to Portland Thorns, releasing a second update, a second statement on behalf of their franchise. Wednesday evening, the Chicago Red Stars board of directors released the announcement saying that they voted to remove Arnim Whistler as chairman of the board, essentially to transition him out of his board seat immediately with the Chicago Red Stars, and to codify his removal from any further participation with either the club or board operation. So this comes just a day after Whistler's individual statement saying that he would have removed himself from NWSL Board of Governance operations. So it sort of felt like multiple steps back. Local media in Chicago, we were told in February that a sort of internal step back had already taken place within the club. And primarily Chief Business Officer Becky Lynch was going to be handling day-to-day things. And this was, again, back in February. So then it was a little bit curious as to how an additional step back was going to differ from the step back that already took place by Whistler. So perhaps they were at the time thinking day-to-day versus governance matters are two different things. Let's make this statement. But here, again, it almost wasn't even a full 24 hours. It just sort of felt like 18 hours or so. The Board of Governors taking that additional step. So reaction to the news was just still a little bit, what does it all mean? I reached out for clarity to the Chicago Red Stars communications, and they further clarified that the board of directors wants to help facilitate a sale of Arnim's shares in a timely process, which is both prudent and, when complete, can lead Red Stars players, coaches, and front office staff to a better future. I also just wanted to get additional clarification around the board of directors, because I will say that there wasn't necessarily like their board of directors that were hiding. But on the Chicago Red Stars website, they're titled very differently. They're listed on the Chicago Red Stars website as the board of managers and advisory board and co-chair. So essentially, yes, that I got confirmation that yes, that is the ultimately the board of directors. So it's consisted of 6 folks on the board of directors. 5 of the members of that board are part of the new wave of investorship that came in 2021. And one of the board members is an original co-founder of the Chicago Red Stars, who has been investing in the Chicago Red Stars since 2007 and ultimately helped to found them. So definitely a mix, right? So it's something, it's like phase 1. When this news dropped, it just sort of almost felt like phase 1. And this is where it sort of feels like there's just a constant hitting of the reset button. It's like, here's one step. And then it's like, okay, here's the first step. And then it's like, okay, here's the first step again. So it's almost like, this is all still very new and still very fresh. And I think there's still a lot of reaction to it that's still yet to come. And quite frankly, part of what came out of this report, these investigative findings, is how there wasn't the infrastructure in place for accountability to begin with. So here we are now, still sort of having these conversations of how to have accountability when the infrastructure for accountability never existed. So I think there's
so like these owners, higher up executives that are involved and that knew about misconduct that was happening and helped cover it up, helped facilitate it in some senses. There's no guidelines set in the NWSL, in the league, in these specific clubs to say, hey, if you violate these policies, you are fired, you are immediately removed, your name goes up in a billboard in the city. There's nothing like that. So there's nothing like that written. So these clubs and the league right now are scrambling to figure out what to do. And I think that's why a lot of these statements took a little bit of time to come out, because it wasn't like, okay, your names are in this investigation report, you're immediately fired, because that's not written anywhere. And as owners of some of these clubs, we saw it, Sandra, you and I talked about this. We saw it with Washington Spirit last year and Steve Baldwin and Michelle Kang. You cannot force someone to sell a club because there's nothing written about that. Despite violating policies, you cannot force someone to sell their ownership stake in a club. So I think that's kind of what everyone's looking ahead to now, after these statements have come out and people have been removed from their positions of power in terms of Chicago and Arnim Whistler being removed from as chairman of the Red Stars board, but he's still a part owner and still has a say, or at least some type of hand in the pot at Chicago.
I'm curious if, with the follow-up of that and that the board wants to help facilitate a sale of Whistler's shares, that if it's a bit of a mutual agreement at this point. I think it's important that you bring up the example of the Washington Spirit. We saw year-long interfighting between that ownership group throughout 2021, and it ultimately escalated to the point where there were the NWSL Board of Governance did get involved. There was a hearing in place. Both parties were listened to. And then ultimately a resolution had to take place amongst the Washington Spirit ownership group. And I think this next phase, I think people are looking for, those next areas of accountability. What does that look like? And what does that mean? And are owners who are releasing statements saying how much they love the club and how much they love the team and how devastated they are or filled with sorrow, are they actually going to put not their money, but their feeling and what's left of their heart into action and do what's best for these clubs? Are they going to engage in, is what's coming out of Chicago right now specifically, an opportunity for one last collaborative effort. Is Whistler interested in moving forward, in finding, a sale of shares in a timely process that would, essentially help the Chicago Red Stars club moving forward? Does that mean they are invested in ensuring that the Chicago Red Stars stay the Chicago Red Stars? What does all that mean? I think those are the next things that people are going to be looking at and paying attention to. Part of this investorship group that came in was touted so loudly as many people who had ties to the city of Chicago. And what does that mean for this team moving forward? So I think that's something that we'll be keeping an eye on, as these statements that are coming out now sort of have components. We'll just say components of responsibility and accountability attached to them, but they don't have actual conclusions just yet. So we will keep an eye on that moving forward, because as always, the news cycle is endless, but it doesn't end there. There has been reaction from players as well in the build up to this game against the United States women's national team and England.
Yeah, there's media availability, and the media are asking these players about them, whether directly involved, indirectly, or involved, saying, like, asking them about this situation and what their thoughts are on it, how they are affected by it, what their thoughts are, how they're finding joy in these moments, what the vibe is around the team. And these are all great questions by the media to kind of gauge the understanding of what these players are going through, despite being on the national team and perhaps their names not being in the report, but they're all still affected by this, playing in this league for so many years and under these coaches.
We're going to get into some of their statements, some of the players' reactions ahead of the match against England at Wembley Stadium, right after a quick break.
The UEFA Champions League. 9 months of heart-stopping, hold-your-breath acceleration. While Mbappe shines in the city of lights, Benzema's racking up the hat tricks, and the Reds want more magic in Liverpool. This ain't amateur hour. This is the best of the best of the best. This is the UEFA Champions League. Stream every match live on Paramount+.
Let's look ahead a little bit to the United States women's national team versus England. You've got USA versus the Lionesses. You've got the reigning 2019 World Cup champions going up against the European champions. And it's tough. It's tough to come on here, Lisa, and say, hey, let's talk about a soccer game when all of this is going on. And quite frankly, that seems to be the case coming out of camps and trainings and media days out of England right now as well. There has been some, as you mentioned, media availability around this game specifically with both teams, both the United States women's national team and England women's national team. And what has been in the front of all of this has been the Yates report that has dropped. We have heard from Becky Sauerbrunn and Alana Cook, and now as recently as this morning, stateside Megan Rapinoe. And these players have echoed the sentiment that persons who have been in positions of power, whether they be owners, members of ownership, people with roles at the executive level, or U.S. soccer officials, should be removed, should be gone, should be removed from their roles within women's soccer. And I think in that very first episode where we were sort of talking about all of this, Lisa, and sort of running through the first reactions of this report dropping, we had wondered, what those next steps were going to look and or feel like. And while clubs or franchises or U.S. soccer or the league are navigating those things for themselves, it sounds like the players are making it quite clear what they feel those next steps and accountability should look like and what they should entail.
Yeah, I mean, Megan Rapinoe, one of the voices that explicitly calling for accountability, Vlatko and Pino doing media availability actually this morning right before we went live. But Rapinoe saying, quote, "I don't think Merritt Paulson is fit to be the owner of the Portland Thorns. I don't think Arnim Whistler is fit to be the owner of Chicago." And very explicitly stating her remarks on that. Even in terms of talking about the Spanish Federation and the U.S. heading to Spain to play them in just a few days' time after this England match, saying, if we show up, we're in support of the players. We're not supporting the Spanish Federation. We support the players. And I think that's the overwhelming result and the overwhelming speech from all of these players is that they're supporting one another. They all want change. They are all doing this together, arm in arm.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of vulnerability, we'll just say, I think, in honesty, from these players, being asked and fielding these questions, by media in the best way that they can. Crystal Dunn at one point mentioning how difficult it is to actually feel joy while competing in the jersey at this moment. Becky Sauerbrunn opening her media statements, saying, "We're going to be asked about this a lot, so we'll just tell you now, we are not okay. We're not doing well. That the team is struggling at this moment." And Alana Cook just echoing that, saying that it should no longer fall on the players, and it just has continued to do that at this point. But Megan Rapinoe today also giving additional perspective as well, sort of looking at the match ahead just a little bit and saying how those types of moments are moments that you really wake up for as a player at this level. The idea of playing against an English side that is really peaking at their prime right now, and doing that on their turf and playing at a facility like Wembley is something that she is excited for and leaning into a bit. So I am curious as to what we will see in terms of solidarity and support around that match, like leading up to the match. Rapinoe has been clear that the biggest platform that the United States has is actually on the pitch, and that Lucy Bronze has also spoken out on this as well, and has said that there are ongoing conversations about how these two teams can continue to show solidarity moving ahead into the game. But we will be keeping an eye on that in the lead up to kickoff. And I'm curious as to, the players who will specifically get to, participate in those things, because typically you have two starting 11s take the pitch in this game. So let's maybe pivot to that a little bit. What could we possibly see? Who can we see lacing them up come Friday, whether it's for England or the United States? Let's talk about the opposition a little bit, Lisa. There are some updates to the roster, players who won't necessarily, be part of this big historic game.
Yeah, I think some of the news dropping from the English side of this in terms of player availability, the biggest one coming out, Alicia Russo pulling out of the England squad for just a small injury, but the forward will return back to Manchester United and rehab there. She actually missed one or two of the last club games that United played, so she pulled out, and then there was no replacement called in. But also Leah Williamson, the captain of the English side, she left camp just the other day due to an injury. So because of that, and Lucy Parker also missing out due to injury, there has been some call-ups for the English side, but 23 players for the England side, coming into this camp, as they also have 2 matches, one against the US and then the Czech Republic, as the US plays against England and then they go to Spain to play. But there's been player rotation on both sides of it due to injury. For the United States players, a lot of them competing in the NWSL towards the end of this season. It's a long regular season as they head into the postseason, and due to that, some nicks and injuries. We knew Alex Morgan was not called into this camp due to injury. Taylor Kornieck, a midfielder with the San Diego Wave, initially called in to this roster for Vlatko, but ruled out due to injury. She was replaced by Racing Louisville rookie Jaelin Howell, stepping into the roster. And then most recently, Mallory Pugh ruled out of the friendlies just the other day, and Pugh will not be replaced. So 23 players for both sides heading into this fixture that is tomorrow night at Wembley. I think the vibes around Wembley are it's electric for both sides, even in these press conferences, despite all the somber and serious conversation about the investigations into US soccer and the NWSL. Even Megan Rapinoe stating, like, this is one of the biggest games. This is one of the biggest friendlies because it's a sold out friendly at Wembley, not on American soil. World champions against European champions. This is a huge match. Match.
Yeah, I think in terms of like, it's a big match in terms of like the event that it is, like in the timing of it. You've got, USA coming off of their CONCACAF W championship. You've got England coming off of their Euros championship, World Cup qualification secured. It's funny to think at one point this game was still slightly in limbo, right? They announced the date for it, but they said it would be determined on whether or not England's September qualification matches, went the way they had planned, and it did, thankfully. So yes, I would agree that it's big in terms of the event and magnitude of it. But obviously, with all of the current news and reporting around women's soccer in the United States, it has a little bit of, I think, of a different heavy emphasis on actual results. We've been hearing that is a little bit, it's much more different than what than I think people were anticipating just a few months before. People were looking at this as like a measuring bar, as a level, that there was going to be the opportunity to sort of, size up these two teams against each other. I know for me personally, as someone in the space covering it, I personally have a little bit less emphasis on that. I'm not about to be out here, heavily critiquing a player's performance in light of having to be re-traumatized by something. So I think hearing that specifically from these players, hearing that from the coaching staff and Vlatko Andonovski as well, it's been repeated a few times over these last 2 media availabilities that there is far less of an emphasis on the result in this game. And it very much is going to be about the experience and the opportunity in front of them. So with that being said, though, talking a little bit about this, knowing who's going to be available and knowing who's not going to be available, Lisa, I think it's time to maybe put a little bit of a wish list together. What would you maybe like to see out of this game on the United States side of things? I know I've already said, I think it's Trinity Rodman's time to shine. How about you? What do you think?
I sure hope it's Rodman's time to shine, because when you look at the forward group and even the midfield group for this U.S. side, it's definitely not as deep as it was maybe heading into the CONCACAF W Championship, where we didn't see Rodman get significant minutes or really minutes at all. So without Pugh, without Alex Morgan, there's still Ashley Hatch, Megan Rapinoe, Trinity Rodman, Sophia Smith, and then Alyssa Thompson, the 17-year-old high schooler coming into this one. But when you look at that front line, of course, we've talked about Rose Lavelle, putting her into that front line. Ashley Sanchez can play deeper 10 role or withheld 9 role. I think we could see that rotation coming in. But between this front line, I hope Rodman gets significant minutes as well. But I think Hatch, as really the true number 9 in this scenario, is a little bit interesting, because it's not the same number 9 that an Alex Morgan would play. I could even see Sophia Smith playing in the 9 in this front line for Vlatko Andonovski, because she can play that role with Rodman out on the wing. So maybe maybe a Megan Rapinoe, Sophia Smith, Trinity Rodman front line with Smith in the middle, Rodman out right, and Pino out left. I could see that as a starting 11. I think in the midfield, when we look at some of the other players brought in with Coffey and DeMello, I hope Coffey gets time. She deserves it. She played in the CONCACAF W Championship. She's done incredibly well for Portland. I think this is a player that you continuously bring in, and if you want her to be part of the fold, you give her significant minutes. But that's my front line prediction to start it. We'll see about Megan Rapinoe. That's she could be a 75th minute sub coming in off the bench, but I think it'll be Pino, Smith, and Rodman up front to start.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't disagree with any of that. I think while I'm eager to see Rodman against a team like England, which I anticipate that we will, I just don't know if it's going to be over the course of a full 90 minutes or off the bench, quite frankly. And I'm not really swayed one way or the other. I just would like to see it, period. That's just sort of where I'm at on it. And I guess maybe I should edit that. Like maybe like I want to see it and I want to see a good chunk of time. I don't want to see like Rodman come in and close out like, 4 minutes of stoppage time. That I don't want to see.
I mean, getting the start for her though, like that's pretty big. It hasn't been done consistently under Vlatko and Anofsky. So But when you look at someone, the comparison between a Rodman and a Thompson, I think Rodman deserves it over Thompson, but I still want to see Thompson get time. Why bring her in if you're not going to give her time, especially against the European champions?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's something to think about or sort of, highlight a little bit going into this match. But, even with the backline too, like, I think it's always exciting to get the chance to think about which attackers are going to get, the start or the time in a big game like this. But I think defensively too is there's a lot of excitement around that as well. I mean, like, what are we like? Are we going to see Cook? Are we going to see Girma? Handling things in that center back duo against England, and if they do, how will they fare against them? Somebody like a Sofia Huerta, getting the opportunity against England's team. It's tough, so trying to nail down their attackers as well. And being able to sort of see how she embraces that type of challenge, because she is typically that we've been seeing her as a typical fullback that they want to see her getting higher into the attack. Yeah. So how is she going to be handling a game like that?
And I think a big question mark is Crystal Dunn. She's back on the roster. Yeah. I don't think she'll get a start against England, just kind of getting back into the fold. I think we'll see Emily Fox in that left back position, but I hope Dunn gets time in this first match. And if she's playing in the left back role, I hope we see it in this one. If she's playing elsewhere on the field, I mean, that's TBD. That'll be determined when she subs in for maybe a more of an attacking player and we see that rotation, but I doubt it. I think Fox will get the start in the back line. I frankly would love to see Naomi Girma and Sauerbrunn get the start against England. It's no knock against Alana Cook. I just think that in domestic play, Naomi Girma has been phenomenal, outplaying veterans in this league, outplaying anyone that comes against her defensively, being able to stop any team, any opponent that San Diego has faced. So I would really love to see a backline of Fox, Girma, Sauerbrunn, and then Sofia Huerta on the right. Not sure about Haley Mace, if she'll get too many minutes in this, maybe at the end of game, seeing that rotation, but that's my prediction for a starting backline in this one.
When you're looking at maybe a prediction in this one, let's have some fun with it. There isn't a heavy emphasis on result right now.
Yeah.
But sometimes things change for a player once that whistle goes off. So I still think
they want to win, despite there not being yes, the players are saying that Vlatko and Anofsky is saying that there's not a huge emphasis on a result. I think that means that we're going to see more player rotation, maybe 45 minutes for each player and not waiting until the 70th or 80th minute, but just getting players minutes, just getting them minutes at this level. But once you step on the field, it's game over. You want to win. You want to do everything you can to win. These are professional athletes. They're competitors. They want to score. They want to keep shutouts, and they want to win games no matter what they say.
All right, all right. I mean, listen, we've shown a lot of love to the front line, what we want to see there. We've shown a lot of love to the back line and what maybe we want to see defensively. Is there anything in that middle third that you're going to be keeping an eye on in this match tomorrow?
I believe that we will see Herrera, Lavelle, Sullivan get the start. I think he's going to stick with Old Faithful. Maybe we'll see Coffee slot in for Sullivan. I would like to see that rotation, but I want to see Coffee get significant minutes in this because I think she is the future defensive midfield of this U.S. team. I'm not so sure about Savannah DeMello, but Ashley Sanchez, she's the future as well. If Vlatko and can get Coffee and Sanchez on the pitch at the same time in the midfield, perhaps with a Rose. I love the Rose Lavelle Ashley Sanchez combination, but that could leave a lot of exposure and a lot of pressure on Coffee defensively. But that's what I want to see between those three. But who knows if we'll see Christy Mewis at the 6 again? You never know about that one. But I really do want to see Coffee get significant minutes and Ashley Sanchez.
Yeah, I'm with you as well. I think we're going to see that combination of Lavelle. We're going to see Herrera and Sullivan. This is, I think, for the moment, this is Vlatko's perhaps his ideal kind of a middle three, and we'll see. Quite frankly, I would like to see it again. I think Roosevelt has done quite well against England's national team, and I would love to see her have another massive game in front of a big crowd. But
a big crowd not in particularly in favor of the United States. That's what I think is going to be a huge test, and that's really why I want to see so many of these inexperienced players get significant caps, because it's one thing to go into a roaring stadium in Washington, D.C. that's all U.S. fans and maybe has 5% of the opposition's fans cheering for you. But for an experience like this, for a rookie like Sam Coffey, DeMello, even Ashley Sanchez, who's played on big stages, but not quite this big, and Trinity Rodman, when yes, they're excited for these players, the fans are, but they're not cheering for them. They're rooting for their home England squad. And I think that's going to be a huge test for this team.
Yeah, I think that's that was part of the challenge, right? And sort of setting up these games, that was the opportunity that this program was looking for, and they're going to get it. Wembley Stadium is no small facility. They're anticipating a near sellout or sellout crowd at this match, and you get to watch it all tomorrow on Friday, October the 7th. It's going to be a mid-afternoon game, so 3 p.m. Eastern kickoff. Find a spot to watch it if you can. You know, England prime time, but stateside early afternoon. So make sure you find a good spot to check it out. Lisa and I, of course, will eventually recap the match and all of the good stuff that comes out of it. We want to thank everybody for joining us today and listening to Attacking Third. Download, follow, and listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, everywhere. Please leave us a 5-star rating and review. It really helps us here at Attacking Third. You can watch us too, subscribe to us on YouTube to know whenever we'll go live. And Lisa and I will be back with more United States Women's National Team coverage and then NWSL playoff coverage as well. For Sandra, Herrera, and Lisa Roman, this was Attacking Third.